Hey guys, Mark here, and if you watch this video all the way to the end, you will never get burnt out again. Over the last 7 years, I've worked anywhere from 12 to 16 hours per day, every single day with very few exceptions. And most people think it's impossible, but I say not only is it possible, it's doable if you understand how the brain works and if you understand science. Burnout is a choice. Let me explain what I mean. Here's the best way to understand burnout, okay? Let's say this green line here generally represents your work ethic. So you're working your ass off. Maybe you have some phases where you're working more hours per day, but generally you're working pretty consistently every single day, day in and day out. And on the x-axis over here, we have time. Let's say this is a span of about 6 months. Now, this red line I'm about to draw is your actual result, your success. So all this time that you're working, you basically see nothing. So you have all the inputs, the work is there, but you're not seeing any results until very, very late into your journey. And this little point right here, this little inflection point is the point where you're never going to feel burnt out again, because not only are you working hard, but you're actually seeing the results. The problem is this entire zone right here is like the burnout zone. This is where the work is there. You're working your ass off, but you don't see any results. People don't get burnt out because they're working too hard. They get burnt out because they're working hard without seeing any actual results. But there's actually a very simple fix to this, because no matter what you're going to start, there is going to be this period of time between when you start acting like a winner, like right here, and we actually start winning right here. This entire section you can't really escape, but you can escape that feeling and that sense of being burnt out. Now, the reason that you feel burnt out during this entire period right here is because you are unconsciously centering your reward mechanisms in your brain around something that is outside your control. It's something external. You can't just wake up and determine exactly how much money you want to make. Unless you're working a job, it's not like I work 8 hours today, I get paid X amount. If I work 10, I get paid, X plus 2. That's not how business works. Business is building this thing this entire time without seeing any results, and eventually reaching the inflection point where it actually starts becoming fun and you get like this amazing sense of progress, and you get that addictive feedback loop, because progress is addictive. But working hard on something and not seeing anything become of it, that's really, really hard to get through. But there's a simple fix. Like I said, the reason you feel that way is because it's external. All you have to do is center that reward mechanism to be something internal. And by internal, all I mean is something that is actually within your control. Perfect example, let's say that you are a salesperson. You're taking high ticket sales calls. You're trying to get to $10,000 per month. You can't directly control somebody paying you money over the phone. However, you can control your reps that you're putting in. For example, one framework that Alex Hormozi has that is phenomenal is he would basically say, I want to collect 10,000 no's. Like, I want to speak to 10,000 people that say no to me, because that would be such a massive amount of reps that I would get in that it would be unreasonable for me to not see results. Well, how does that tie in to burnout? Well, the difference is if I center my reward mechanism and my whole identity around how much money I'm making, my emotions are just going to be a freaking roller coaster all the time. It doesn't matter if I'm making $0 a month or $100,000 a month. Money comes and goes in seasons, right? But I don't want my own feeling of self-worth and identity to be centered around it. So instead, I center it around something that I can control it. Let's say in the sales example, doing role plays, right? If I just do 10 times the number of role plays as anybody else as the people in the same business that I'm selling in, I'm just going to blow by them. Not only that, but I'm going to actually feel better. So instead of saying, okay, I get this massive dopamine rush when I make money, I train my brain to create this massive dopamine rush when I have a mock role play. So if you think of your process in entrepreneurship and making money online, kind of like a spectrum, and this is basically the start, and this is when you're making all the money in the world, and this is where you're making zero. This is the process. Most people, they center their entire reward mechanism around the end result. But the end result, as we know, it's there, it feels good, and then it's gone. You need to learn to enjoy the process, not just for your own sanity, but for avoiding burnout. Because burnout only really becomes a problem when you're so obsessed about this and not about this, not about the reps, the process, not about the journey. This amazing study that was conducted for people that are visualizing their goals, and the people that visualized the goal itself were actually less likely to achieve the goal compared to the group that was visualizing the process of them achieving the goal. The simple way to change your reward mechanism from being centered around something outside your control to something inside of your control is a simple 2-step process of influencing your subconscious brain. Because this is something that's done subconsciously. If I walked up to you and gave you a $100 bill, you'd probably get at least a little spike of dopamine. But we can rewire that using this process. Number one is simply repetition. There's only 2 ways to influence the subconscious brain. One is simply repeating stuff to yourself over and over and over and over and over again. That's why hypnotists, a lot of times when they're speaking to you and they're trying to get into that subconscious brain, they'll repeat, one phrase over and over again to get you into this super influential state. And the second thing is going to be emotion, because the way that you can create these feelings in your brain is you have to simulate them first in your imagination. So the way that you can do this, and the way that I have personally done this, is simply by controlling your self-talk. After you complete something difficult, what you say to yourself, your own internal dialogue, is incredibly important in terms of creating that like dopamine rush that you just did something really fucking difficult. You should fucking hype yourself up for it. You should be like, fuck yeah, I just did the shit that I didn't want to do. I fucking did it, and I'm fucking proud of myself for that. It's gonna sound so incredibly corny, I'm not gonna lie, but if you do it over and over and over again, this is how you build your identity around something that's not just installed in you natively from evolution. This is something where you can take control of your own belief system and gamify so that you can achieve your goals faster. So at this point, you're like, Mark, okay, I get it. I need to center my reward mechanism around something that's in my control, something where it's centered around the process and the reps and not the outcome. Now what? Well, the thing about burnout is it's kind of like a big battery, and the battery is going to run out if you do things that drain the battery. But in the same way, it's also going to be charged if you participate in activities that are going to charge it. Because I think we can all admit we've done something before that was really, really hard, but it didn't make us feel burnt out. It actually gave us more energy. And so everything that you do throughout the day, it can be divided into this column of something that is going to charge your overall energy and reduce burnout, or take away from it, right? What are some things that take away from it? Number one is going to be shallow work, right? Where you're doing things, you're kind of bouncing around from thing to thing throughout the day. There's no amount of focus. There's no precision. There's really no overall strategy. You're just kind of going through the motion. Another thing that is particularly relevant for me is like being on a ton of calls. I'm a super duper introvert, and I like my deep work. I like working on something challenging, locked away in the dark with nobody talking to me like that. If I spend more time in that zone, I feel so much better. So spending time on things like calls is going to be something that would drain my burnout battery. Another thing that would drain the battery is just not taking care of your physical health. I believe that spiritual energy is super duper real, but physical energy is also very real. If you treat your body like shit, you don't go to the gym, you don't eat good foods, you don't get good sleep, how can you expect to wake up and attack the day like a crazy motherfucker? Now, how about the things that are going to add to the battery and charge the battery and make it stronger? Well, what's the opposite of shallow work, right? That's going to be deep work. Deep work is work that you do that is challenging, that is like 1 to 5% beyond your current skill set. So it's like causing you to think creatively and solve problems that you've never solved before. Another thing that charges the battery is, achieving hard goals. The only thing that really excites me anymore is like doing something that other people tell me that I can't do. They're like, oh, there's no way you could do that. It's never been done before. That's the kind of fucking goals that light me on fire. And if anything, like reduce my chances of burnout to like damn near 0%. I really, really enjoy when people doubt me. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen super often anymore. But use that as fuel. That is spiritual fuel for your soul, to build your story, to show people that you're not a fucking person to be fucked with. If you put your mind to something, you will do it, period. End of story. What I want you to do is look at everything that you did over the last 24 hours. How many of the activities you participated in were things that were actually going to add to your burnout battery and reduce the chances of you ever burning out? How much deep work did you actually do? If the answer is anything under 3 to 4 hours, it was not enough. How much time were you spending just like kind of wandering around and just, letting the work find you instead of acting with precision and strategy? How much time were you spending on calls if that's not something that is a productive effort for you? I want you to do an audit and identify all the things that are draining your energy and all the things that are adding to it. By the way, all of this is irrelevant of the amount of work that you're doing. I think that you can actually work twice the hours of somebody and have more energy than them simply because you're working on the right things. Again, burnout is not related to how hard you're working. It's related to what you're working on and what your reward mechanisms in your brain are centered around. Other than that, guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you like ideas like this that are conceptual, applicable, centered around mindset, you can always check out my email list. I'll drop it in the description under this video. Other than that, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.